The Philadelphia 76ers took another step towards completing the roster and filling out all these final spots to prepare for the regular season. A familiar face will be sticking around on that last two-way spot, this time being Jeff Dowtin. I'm going to break down what that means for the Sixers team, take a look at the roster overall, the two-way slots, and why Jeff Dowtin has changed my mind a little bit on what he could mean to this team throughout NBA Summer League. So we'll start right off with this Shams bomb that came through last night saying the Philadelphia 76ers are signing guard Jeff Dowtin on a two-way NBA contract. Sources tell The Athletic and Stadium. Dowtin averaged 17.1 points and 5.7 assists across NBA Summer League for the 76ers this season after playing 12 games in Philadelphia in 23-24. So we are familiar with Jeff Dowtin's game at this point. He spent last season on a two-way contract with the Sixers that was eventually upgraded to a standard NBA deal, so he was technically available for that playoff run, although we did not get to see him on the floor. He's a guy that is clearly trusted by Nick Nurse when you dive back into his history. After spending some time at the University of Rhode Island during his college days, he bounced around in the NBA for a couple of different points, got a little bit of an opportunity with the Orlando Magic, the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Los Angeles Lakers before eventually landing on a two-way contract with the Toronto Raptors, where, of course, Nick Nurse was the head coach at the time. Dowtin followed Nick Nurse over to Philadelphia and honestly has proved himself as a pretty solid player. I thought it was very clear during NBA Summer League that he looked a shade too good for the competition. Now, I know this phrase gets thrown out there a lot, more so in the baseball sphere, but kind of the quadruple A caliber of player, with that meaning that a player that is too good for the minors but not quite good enough for the majors. I think Jeff Dowtin falls a little bit in that category there, but he is a guy that is incredibly solid. You know who he is, and he is 27 years old at this point. They typically, when you look at the two-way slots, they tend to be used for guys you're looking to develop, but this is a nice mix that the Sixers do have. And to dive in specifically for the two-way options here, they officially have Jeff Dowtin, Justin Edwards, and David Jones. So both Justin Edwards and David Jones being rookies there. And it also mentions the shout out to Jacob Moreno of Sixers Country, who says at the bottom, all three of Philadelphia's two-way slots are now filled. Would have loved for Judah Mintz to stick around and Kiev Aluma as well. Absolutely agree with that assessment, but I do like this interesting mix that the Sixers have added, that Jeff Dowtin's a clearly guy that if the opportunity presents itself, if there's some injuries or they just need some additional ball handling, he can fill for an extended period of time. That you know what he is in a way that both David Jones and Justin Edwards are more of the developmental projects. Now, Edwards is a guy that I absolutely agree with taking the swing on. He's a dude that had a borderline first-round label, and if you want to flashback fully, he was a top-5 recruit coming out of Philadelphia. They did go to Emotep Charter right here in the area. Things did not work out for him at Kentucky. He was very clearly outshined from guys like Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham, who are obviously each top 10 picks in this year's draft. And Edwards, there were some flaws in his games that we're seeing, that he's still very left-hand dominant, needs to develop that right-hand area, but he is a guy that I'm seeing a niche that he can carve himself out for. He's been very disruptive defensively for the Sixers team in Summer League, and that kind of commitment on that end of the floor, along with him being a 6'7" wing with some real deal athleticism, could be enough to find a slot. Now, the David Jones conversation, a little bit different to me. I just don't fully see it with him. I understand the idea of him, and when you look at his Memphis tape, it did pop, particularly the way he rebounds the ball for a 6'3" guard, and also a guy that can score the ball at a pretty high rate. He did end the Summer League on his best performance by far, but I'm still a little concerned for what he can grow into. And frankly, both Judah Mintz and Kiev Aluma would be guys I would have been much more willing to give that slot to. But they did commit to David Jones immediately following the draft, so it's clear that there's some intrigue on the Sixers end there. Now, to talk back to Jeff Dowtin a little bit, I did want to touch on kind of the roster outlook as a whole. So shout out to Sixers Adam, who tweets out, huge win to get Dowtin Jr. on a two-way deal. Clearly an NBA caliber guard player, in my opinion. Sixers can fill out the remaining 3 roster spots or use only 2 of them and then activate Dowtin to have him serve as the third-string point guard for the time being. So that is how things played out last year when you look at how he was used on the Sixers team, that he did start as a two-way guy and then ultimately was upgraded to that standard deal. Did not play an extended period of time, but what I'll say about Dowtin on the court is he's just incredibly solid. Now, there's no real defining characteristics in his game. He's just a guy that can do a little bit of everything. To dive into his NBA stats here, you can see not a ton to break down, that during his time with the Sixers, he played just 12 games, 11.8 minutes per game in those actions, averaged 4.3 points, 1.7 rebounds, 2.3 assists. Through his career, he has shot 34.1% from 3, obviously on limited attempts there, 44.5% from the field. But you can get a little bit more feel for his G League statistics, where you can see what he can bring to the table. And to pull those up specifically, as I mentioned, he did bounce around with the Lakers, with the Wisconsin team, which was the Milwaukee Bucks affiliate, and then you can see his Raptors stats there. And then last year with the Delaware Bluecoats, in 20 games of action, 32.5 minutes per game, averaged 19.1 points, 2.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.2 steals, shot the ball really well, 38.7% from beyond the three-point arc and 41.3% in his G League career. And ultimately what I'll say about watching Dowtin a little bit down at the Blue Coats level, it was clear he looked like the best player on the floor, which is notable when you're playing next to guys like Ricky Council and Terquavion Smith, who primarily played as a six-man for the Sixers team. But it was clear that he was head and shoulders the guy, running the offense, being the captain, being that level of floor general. He's a dude that I think Nick Nurse really likes for that reason, that while he does not have this flash to his game, he's just going to be solid. He's not going to make mistakes for this team. He's going to make the right reads. He's not going to have costly turnovers. He can play make, and the shot looks just fine. There's definitely kind of a strangeness to the Jeff Dowtin style of play, the way that he moves. He's kind of got like a little bit of a fadeaway in his jumper. His kick's a little off, but you know what? It goes in, and there is kind of like everything about him is just kind of a little strange in a way that's appealing to me. The way that he moves, the sporadic nature to it, it's something that I think is worth having around. And by all accounts, he does seem to be a guy that's pretty well liked within the organization that I do think matters when speaking about these type of fringe players. Now, the job is not done for this Sixers roster overall. And to dive into what this depth chart is truly looking like for this Sixers team, we have at point guard Tyrese Maxey and Kyle Lowry, and these are, of course, not including the two-way guys. So Tyrese Maxey, Kyle Lowry, and the shooting guard position, Kelly Oubre, Eric Gordon, and Jared McCain. Small forward, Paul George and Ricky Council. Power forward, Caleb Martin and KJ Martin. And at center, Joel Embiid, Andre Drummond, and Adem Bona there. So you can see a little bit of what this depth chart looks like. Obviously, there are still at least two spots that are to be anticipated to be filled out. I'm getting the feeling, and the Sixers did take this approach last year as well for a good portion of the season, that they're probably going to enter the season with 14 guys on roster. It's a little bit of a money-saving tactic, and it also gives you some flexibility for, maybe you want to do a trade that is a one player, you trade out one guy, bring back two, or something along those lines. So, and it also keeps the flexibility for if Jeff Dowtin continues to improve, for a guy that essentially will be entering his professional prime at this point. If he does take another step and he is a guy that is deserving full-time minutes on the Sixers team, you can just upgrade him to a standard contract, and then that would open the door or the possibility to add a guy like Judah Mintz or Kiva Luma to snatch that third two-way slot there. So it does give the Sixers a little bit of additional flexibility here, but the bottom line is Jeff Dowtin's pretty much as good as it gets from a two-way talent standpoint. That oftentimes, like as far as NBA ready, this is probably the most like NBA ready two-way slot that I've seen from a guy. I was a little bit heard conflicting reports leading up to things on whether or not Dowtin was even officially eligible, because we know he is on the older side, 27 years old. Now, the official verbiage in the NBA CBA is a player that has played 3 or fewer seasons at the NBA level is eligible. And to dive into Dowtin, while he's played a little bit of everywhere, it is only over the course of 3 seasons. He did not make his NBA debut until he was 24 years old. So ultimately, from here on out, he will be operating under the standard contract, that this is the last chance for him to snatch onto this two-way deal. But it may be all his need. But I do think that he did take some strides forward in Summer League. He's improving in a way that I wasn't really confident was possible in his game. Again, as I mentioned, he's just solid. It's not like I think he's going to overnight grow this ridiculous athleticism or improve as a shooter in a major way or anything like that. But if he can just be good enough, there's definitely a place for him to be a serviceable rotational NBA guard, and I could certainly see his career shaping out from there. So it's a huge opportunity for Jeff Dowtin Jr. this season when you think about his future career opportunities, that he definitely has to prove that he is a legitimate NBA guard, as this will be the last time that he can ever really spend true G League minutes or snatch onto that two-way contract to which he can float back and forth. So for the Sixers team, while I understand that there are still bigger needs, the power forward concerns I get are legitimate. Getting a high-level rebounder I think would be a huge addition to this team. But in general, they have been an organization that has lacked enough ball handling, lacked enough passing, and these are characteristics in which Jeff Dowtin can help with. So for a guy that we don't expect to play any sort of major minutes, I think we'll be bouncing back and forth through the G League pretty regularly, at least at the start of the season. I would not rule out him being upgraded to a standard contract in any way. And I also think that this is a little bit of an insurance policy to Jared McCain, that we're still not really sure what his role is going to be, how much of an opportunity that he is going to receive off the opening of this season. In general, while it's still a step ahead of a guy like Doc Rivers, but Nick Nurse is not a guy that's overly lenient in providing minutes to the young talent. So if Nick Nurse feels that Jared McCain is not ready, I could see Jeff Dowtin being the guy that slots in and filling a little bit of those additional minutes. Now, in an ideal world, McCain is just ready from day one. I lean towards that being the case, that I've been really impressed with his maturity, his processing of the game, how he just knows how to play basketball in a way that this is not a guy trying to, have all the tools and putting it together. There's a real maturity in the way that he plays. And I do think his shooting ability is going to be enough to earn him an opportunity, but those will all be questions that will be answered in time and throughout training camp. So we will see what happens from here, but we are inching closer to a complete Sixers roster. Welcome back to Philadelphia, Jeff Dowtin Jr. I'm excited to see if you can take your game to new heights in the second year with the organization, but we will see what happens from here. Appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning into this video. Make sure you drop any comments you have below on Jeff Dowtin or any other concerns there. Smash that subscribe button if you have not already, and drop a like on this video here. I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.